I was standing at my son's grave. If you go turn around, there is his name, Burgess, on that sign. 2.5 years. You know, one thing I think would be very sad is for some of us to stand before God, and maybe He gives you 75 years of life, and He looks at you and He says, what you've accomplished for the kingdom, I could have accomplished in 10. We waste too much of our time on things that don't matter.
That's right.
We need to be about kingdom work. Or maybe He looks at you and said, what you have accomplished, I could have accomplished more in 2.5 years. What I have seen happen through the 2.5 years of that child dwarfs things that I've seen for people who lived a whole lot longer. And I was standing at his grave on Father's Day. And I hope you never have to do that. Some of you have. And I stood there at his grave. And you ever had God just talk to you in a whisper? You hear that whisper? And as I was standing there, and wind is blowing right now, was blowing through the cemetery. And I'm looking at how wrong this seemed to be. And I heard him say, I love you. Rick, you know that I love you. And I said, Lord, I know that you love me. I know that you love me. Lord, I know that I'm a sinner and you are holy and that I had no way to come back to you. So you came to me, so I know that you love me. And he said, Rick, I love you. I said, Lord, I know that you love me because you took on flesh and you walked around and you were tempted by everything this world has to offer. And then some, and you did not sin, and you didn't have to do that. God, I know that you love me. And he says, Rick, I love you. And I said, Lord, I know that when you wanted to suffer for me when you didn't have to, and I know when they were spitting on you, and I know that when you took stripes for my sin and the sins of the world, and you went through this punishment, and they put a crown of thorns on your head, you didn't have to do this. Lord, I know that you love me. And he said, Rick, I love you. And I said, Lord, I know that when you went to the cross, I know you were in the Garden of Gethsemane. I know that when your son was crying out to you and he was sweating blood on his forehead because he was saying, Lord, is there another way for me not to drink of this cup? So many people have talked about that he was stressing over the cross, and that's wrong. That's not what he was stressing over. He was stressing over the fact that Isaiah was talking about this cup. This cup is the cup of God's wrath that was due you and me because the holy God cannot look at sin, and we were sinful, and we had no atonement, and He knows that the great Almighty's punishment due you and me is going to have to be put on Him, and He's stressing over it. And I said, Lord, I know when your son said, is there another way for me not to take this cup? And you said, no, that you, taking on flesh as the Son, went to that cross for me. So I know that you love me. And he said, Rick, I love you. And I said, Lord, I know when you were on that cross and you had been denying yourself drink the whole way there when people tried to give you drink. And I know after those hours of darkness when you had cried out, Father, Father, why have you forsaken me? And you and your son, the Father, the Son, you were at odds and separated for the very first time. You did that when you didn't have to, so I know that you love me. And I know that when you said those two words that are rarely ever talked about, those two words from the cross after the darkness, and they heard Jesus say two words, I thirst. Why did He say, I thirst? You've been denying yourself drink. And He said, I thirst. So they could take His mouth and His tongue and they could moisten it. So He could say to you and me, to our sin, clearly, it is finished. I know that you love me. Lord, I know now more than ever that when you went into that tomb when you didn't have to, and you defeated death, and praise God, my family loves that He defeated death. And when you walked out of that tomb, defeating death forever, I know that you love me. And Lord, when you ascended to heaven to prepare a place for me, I know that you love me. And then The whisper said this, "But Rick, you're not the only one I love. I love all my children." Peter tells us it is his desire that none perish. And he said, "Rick, I'm going to give your child back to you because I've promised you that in the Scriptures. But when my children die without the atonement that I have provided through my Son Jesus Christ, I never get them back. So Rick, I do love you, but you're not the only one I love." Do you have that reassurance? Do you understand that message? I'm going to bring my friend Chris Tomlin back out. Chris is going to come out and sing a song that was inspired by what we just talked about, and that is the hope that our family has. That, guys, you have access to a great power. A great power to know that your sin and earthly death has been defeated forever. You can be eternal because of what Christ did.
There's a peace I've come to know, though my